All right, everyone. So welcome to this presentation about my lessons learned. Actually, I learned after working in part of my desktop for over a year right now, or today. My name is Tomasz Poszytek. I'm coming from Warsaw in Poland. I'm Business Applications VP. I won't really go into details about myself because I don't have time, but if you're interested, just go to this URL and there are just hyperlinks to all my social media channels. So just be my guest, let's connect and continue conversation over there. And one last thing before I really continue, make a big applause to our sponsors because without them we wouldn't be here. So thank you very much. And okay, let's go on. So the presentation is switched into several points. I will not be speaking about the story behind PowerPoint desktop because we don't have time. So that's something you can read on the internet. And other points I will just go as fast as possible. So what is RPA? The first thing. Well, basically RPA isn't something really new. It has started in like 60s of previous age. Nevertheless, the technology actually was evolving and evolving over the 90s. And oh, hello! Hi. And like one of the major moments in this technology was 1990 when the technology for screen scraping was invented, and therefore RPA now is able actually to read what is displayed on the screen. And then somewhere 2000, 2003, 2005, today's leaders on RPA market were founded, like QPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, and as well Softomotive, which Microsoft acquired, right? So the Win Automation that was then changed into PowerPoint desktop. And then 2015 is the moment where really RPA hit the mainstream, that mainly because the companies started to make the push or the move from on-premises to the cloud, and they realized that their legacy applications are not actually capable of being integrated with the cloud processes. So RPA was the answer for most of those issues and not present digital endpoints. All right, so the benefits of RPA are really many. Most of them are related to customer satisfaction, user satisfaction, because we can really move those repeatable tasks from users to bots. There's also money saving and being more flexible as a company because you can really create bots and then monitor them and simply make them better and better over the time. There are two flavors, there are two kinds of bots. The personal ones, so that being triggered by users mainly for personal processes, the attended automation, which is happening on users' machines, and unattended, which is meant for enterprise, for orchestrating processes over many machines, which doesn't necessarily even need to have any kind of terminal to access what is going on. Right, I want to speak about that. Just one information about the pricing if you're interested. So if you'd like to start with PowerPoint desktop, it's actually for free. So if you want to automate processes on your own machine triggered by you from your machine, is for free. Also, PAG is going to be a part of Windows 11 soon, as like a product pre-installed already. But if you'd like to start with attended automation, so for a process triggered from the cloud, then it's cost $40. If in unattended, so if you'd like to create those processes that are running somewhere without users' supervision, then it's $150. And this is for a machine, so you can run multiple bots on the same machine, but not in parallel, but in sequences. However, if you'd like to have more than one bot running at the same time, you have to have more machines, and then you have to buy more unattended RPA add-ons. Right, so now let's jump over to meat, actually. The PowerPoint desktop can work with SAP and JD Edwards, obviously. One information very important, that if you'd like to start automation of SAP, you need to ask SAP admin to go over administration in transaction errors at 10 or 11 if you want to make it persistent, and enable scripting. Yeah, this transaction or that transaction, and turn the scripting on. And also after that, you need to as well go into the machine where the RPA is going to run, and in local sub settings, you have to turn as well this enable scripting on, and disable all other options, because if this is turned on, then every click that the bot is going to make will rise a pop-up, which is really making and causing troubles. With JD Edwards, there are no prerequisites. You can automate either the desktop version, which is written in Java, or the web version that is just HTML. Okay, now the best part. Now, one important thing. RPA is not really a mean to a product, a technology that you can really use to automate anything. So like try thinking about RPA as like about the last possible mean of automation. Try to use DPA whenever possible. DPA is for digital process automation. So that one that is working across digital endpoints, REST APIs, SOAP APIs, any other APIs, but not user interface. Because RPA actually is really vulnerable to anything that can happen on a machine, to any pop-ups, changes in applications, new versions. The selectors might not working, there might be some issues with launching apps. Anything can happen, and RPA is very vulnerable. So when speaking about that, in SAP you can create BAPIs or RFCs if you are a SAP developer. You can as well use third-party tools like, and I forgot. The third-party tools to create interfaces like web services. Oh, Thirdparty, for example. That allows you to create a web service, like to query directly SQL Server or to query BAPIs. And then you can use either HTTP calls or to use SAP ERP connector that is present in Power Automate. It's premium, I know, but well, Power Automate Desktop is not free either. So you'll have that access already, and then use those interfaces instead of RPA, if that's possible. Also, if you're using SAP HANA, so the one that's working in the cloud, you can use all data endpoints to get data, which is much faster and more reliable than using RPA. And then speaking about JD Edwards, there is a tool called Orchestrator, and you can as well use to create connectors and record steps. And then, Orchestrator is used to create steps, which can then be transformed into a connector, and connector can be called from Power Automate Cloud Flows as well. Now, the rest of the presentation is switched, is divided into 3 groups. Like now, I'm going to talk about my lessons, lessons that I learned during building bots, then about testing, and lastly about running. Now, any questions so far? Maybe I'm speaking too fast or something.
Tomasz, just one. Is the orchestrator similar to the process advising Power Automate, the Power version of Power Automate? Is that effectively what it does? Or?
Well, Orchestrator is something that in SAP it's called a recorder. It is basically something that records user actions on the JD Edwards interface, and then is able to play what was recorded.
Thanks.
And then you can trigger this to be played from the cloud, using HTTP calls. So that's this kind of a technology. Okay, I think that many, or maybe not most of the things that I'm going to share with you might be obvious, but I hope that at least some of you is going to find something not very obvious, or wow, that's cool, I didn't know that. So let's go. First thing, when building bots, think about the sub-processes. The sub-process is an option, is a feature that allows you to trigger one bot from another. And this is very useful when you're having, for example, a bot or piece of a process that is used to sign into an application. Well, signing procedure is usually the same, and then if you have 10 bots, you don't have to copy that same procedure over and over in every bot. You should create another bot that is used just for signing in, and then calling that bot from other bots, so that whenever something changes in sign in, you have to just make this change in one bot instead of 3, 4, whatever, how many you have. So under the flow control, there is an action called run desktop flow. You have just to pick the desktop that you want, the flow that you want to trigger, fill in input parameters if there are any, and that's done. One flow is going to call another. Then other thing, sorry, too fast. And the second thing is about the subflows. So this is that part of splitting your process into smaller chunks, but inside of a single RPA. So if you have a process where you can name pieces of logic which are reusable, like logging data, or catching errors, or sending mails or something, then instead of doing this over and over again in every step, you can just simply create a subflow, put that logic in there, and simply call that piece of logic from other places in your bot. And that's again, under flow control is action called run subflow. You just have to pick that subflow that you want to call, and bang, it's gonna be called. Another thing is to use comments. So like developers are commenting their code, the same should we, and us as developers in RPA, because after several months, you'll really forget what you wanted, what that specific piece of code is doing. Moreover, those actions here are not really descriptive. So unless you really change names of the selectors to something really descriptive, you won't know, even a week after, where actually this bot is clicking to, like what button, where the button is on the interface. So use comments, put comments so that later you or others who are going to take over your work will be aware what actually that bot is doing. Handle errors. The worst thing I found during working with RPA is the fact that business is the first to know that bot failed, not me. And when business calls me and tells me, hey, I think that the bot is not running because I'm waiting like a week for this document to be processed and it's not really done yet, so can you check? And then I log in and see, okay, the bot failed. So try implementing handling error logic. It can be done on two levels, either on the on the single action level, so you have to double click action, then go to on error, then define what you'd like to be done if error occurs. It can be all errors, like for all errors, or under advanced, there are usually listed those errors that actually can happen on a specific action. So you can catch or act differently per error. The other thing is, again, under flow control, it's called on block error. So you have to put that action on block error, again, define what should happen if error occurs, and then simply put all the actions that you want to be covered under that block. It's like try catch, something sort of. Now, next thing is don't use recorders. So one thing I learned is that if you're trying to actually start doing a bot by using the recorder, it will re-record a lot of messy information. Like every time you move an application, move a window of application or expand it, move mouse and click somewhere else, all those things are recorded. And then once you're done with recording and you get all those steps in your process, you get a mess. Then you have to remove them, change the order. Also, sometimes even though they're clicking at a specific action, it can record something else. So my advice is to, instead of using recorders, simply use UI elements, grab those UI elements you want that you need in a logic, and then create logic manually by drag and dropping actions to press buttons, move mouse, whatever. But the recorders are not really a good option, at least for me. Now about the selectors. When you're getting an UI element, it's always recorded very precisely. So like, if you have an application that has a title, it will be used in a sector as well. And then if something changes in that title, if there is a new window with another title, selector is going to fail because we won't be able to find that element following that path, that selector path. So as well, try to think, try to be wiser, try to use not the equal to, and don't like select every option as possible for the selector. Try as well using other options like starts with, contains, ends with, because then those sectors are going to be less vulnerable to any changes that can happen. Or, sorry, one last thing, if you have like dynamic selectors, for example, if a table, and then each row in a table has a different ID, because I'm together with index, then you can as well switch from this builder selector into custom mode, so that's this toggle at the bottom. And then you can actually use variables as well, so like input ID or row number in a selector so that the bot is going to be able to iterate over a table. When speaking about selectors as well, use keyboard shortcuts because selectors are not always an answer. There's some applications especially, they can actually use keyboard shortcuts. They do have keyboard shortcuts, so as well think of those instead of selectors. One of the last things is use scripts. So whenever it's possible, it's also a wise thing to use scripts. You can use jQuery, you can use Python, PowerShell, and VBA to automate applications instead of simply using selectors. So script is also very much better, more precise, and less vulnerable to changes. Also, when speaking about scripts, you can use that recorder in SAP or Orchestrator in JD Edwards. So it's hidden under script recording and playback. You just turn it on, and then you simply do your action, your activities. All of them are being recorded. In the end, there is a file being generated that contains a VBA script. You can simply copy it, paste it in a VBA action, and this will be done instead of simply navigating the bottom of the interface. If you'd like to check if the application is capable of being automated, then there is an application called Inspect Exa under the Windows Software Development Kit that you can use to actually navigate over the application and check all those UI elements, read their properties to see if they can be accessed by the RPA. So that was the last thing. Now things about testing. Just 5 minutes left. It's a rough ride. I hope your seat was fastened. Right, when testing bots, you have 3 options. You can run the bot in a debug mode, so the one that you just trigger on your desktop and you see how it's running. You have the attended mode and unattended. Right? You can just test the application in 3 modes. So first start with the debug mode, and then speaking about debug mode, don't forget about the breakpoints, so you can put them inside the logic and then simply the bot is going to stop on those breakpoints. And then you can check values of variables or what the bot is actually doing at a point, or what is the selector used, whatever you want to be, to check deeper at that specific point. And then you can as well hit to run or to go to the next action, so the bot can actually iterate action by action, and you can check the status and outputs of each step. Another thing is that if you'd like to run a bot slower in a debug mode, you can change this run delay value from 1 millisecond to up to, I think, 10,000 milliseconds. So the bot can either go faster in a debug mode or can really go slow, so you have enough time to see where it is clicking, where it is failing, and so on. Log data during runs, that's obvious, because what the Power Automate desktop is logging itself is not always enough. So if you'd like to log some custom information like values of variables at specific points, then you should implement your own logic. I do that with an Excel file, so like I just create an Excel, taking screenshots, and then I just write values of specific variables to the Excel, just row by row, and then I have a log for each run. Also, there is a subfolder under local user, and the user that is running the bot, update local. You can find a folder called scripts. There is a GUID of the bot, runs, and the GUID of the instance, where you can find 2 files, that actions, log, and run definitions. And those files are also being used by Power Automate Desktop to log information. Like every action that's being executed is logged there. And also input-output variables from the Power Automate Desktop instances is logged as well, so you can get more information about those specific instances. Right, running bots. Okay, that's fine. What I learned is that, the bots are actually running in full HD in unattended mode, but you can change that value by default. If you navigate to UI Flow Service execonfig, it's in the Power Automate Desktop installation folder. There is a line here that you can just change value of the default screen resolution. Just be aware that this is going to be overwritten every time you install a new version of Power Automate Desktop. But you can change the default values. So if you have a large application that all those UI elements are not really fit on the screen, but for some reasons you would like them to be visible because you're making screenshots or whatever, then you simply have to change the screen resolution. That's one option. The other one is to simply use action set screen resolution, then grab the value of the screen you want to copy screen resolution parameters, and then put it as a first action in a flow logic, so that once RPA is launched, it will simply change the screen resolution to the one you defined. Once the bots are running, especially in unattended mode, it's really good idea to simply go to Desktop Flows Monitor. It's under Monitor and Desktop Flow Runs. There you have a list of all the instances that were running with their statuses, with their current status, the outcomes as well. And then you can actually check every action, every flow, every instance. If instance failed, you can as well go into details and see which action failed. And there is always, or usually as well, a screenshot that supplements information about the error. And also for each step, you can see what were the inputs and outputs in that moment. If you'd like to have like a bird's eye view on your environment, on your Power Automate Desktop, then use Platform Center of Excellence. There are 2 tabs especially. One is about instances, so you can have an overview of all instances running on environments. How are they performing, how long they were running, how many of them are in specific environment. And the second thing is the one about errors. It's the UI, it's Desktop Flow errors. So that you have all the list of errors that happened actually across the environment, so that gives you as well the information why the bots are failing, how you can change them, how you can make them perform better. Right? Also, remember about securing inputs and outputs, because if you don't secure inputs and outputs, they will be visible in logs. So if you have some sensitive information taken from keyboard or whatever, then use those configuration. It then won't be shown in instance run, in logs, whenever. And also in Power Automate Desktop, if you do use input variable, then change it to sensitive text, then it will not be as well visible in logs for anyone. Yeah, that I already said, so use as much as possible connectors. So think about the flow, like out of the box. It's not that you just put RPA and the RPA does everything. For example, you have an actions on SharePoint, then try to do as much on SharePoint using connectors in Cloudflow, and then just trigger desktop flow to do whatever is not possible with the Cloudflow. There are just over 500 connectors today, together with independent publisher programs, so it's really a lot to choose from. Yes, handle those errors, and then not only handle errors on the bug level, but as well do handle errors inside Cloudflows, so like implement the try-catch pattern. So this will not only catch errors in a bot, but as well in a Cloudflow logic. And send yourself emails, send yourself screenshots so that you're the first one to know that something failed. Yes, don't forget about ALM, so just have test dev environment, then have production environment, do changes, do updates on test, then move them to production and don't touch it anymore. And that's also valid because of the new part version releases, so test them on a test environment to see if the new release is not messing up with your selectors, with your logic, because that really happens often. Like the previous version of Power Automate Desktop messed up the focusing in actions. Actions were not, bot was not able to put focus on fields. So test before you go to production. That's it. Well, I made it. So the final wrap up, just, yes, but it's not, the Power Automate Desktop is not an answer to every process you have. Try to think out of the box, use DPA whenever possible, try to do as much with Cloudflows as possible, and really use Power Automate Desktop where it has to be used because there are no other way. Yeah, think about the LM, so prepare environments, move solutions between environments in managed version, and then don't touch anything on production. Last thing, use Power Platform Center of Excellence to get this bird's eye view, to have an overview of how your bots are performing inside your company, and catch errors because you really wouldn't like to be the last one to be informed that something failed in your environment, in your bots. And last thing, if you have never ever tried RPA, the Power Automate Desktop before, and you'd like to start somehow, then what I can recommend you is to go to aka.ms RPA in a day, download the RPA in a day labs. There are 10 labs that will really guide you from the very easy use cases to the most advanced. They're practical, they're really well done. You can find my faces all over there. and this is really a good way to start RPA, to start your journey with RPA in a practical way so that you just learn by clicking, not by reading documentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, that's the right moment to ask them, as we have like 2 minutes left. And you can as well evaluate the session if you have spare time. Well, I wish you a pleasant rest of the conference. So,
could you go back one slide?
One, but yes.
Thank you. No, guess what I need.
Right. It's quite easy. It's RP in a day,
Yeah,
like
maybe.
Power Platform in a day or Power Apps. So you can just type in Google and you find that. Really, you didn't know what's ALM?
I don't know.
How's that possible?
I just got a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
You failed. Shit.
I don't do academics. Yeah.
All right. So, no questions? Did you enjoy the presentation? Did you learn something? Like,
Yeah, it's very good.
I'm glad.
That was really excellent, thank you. I learned some good tips.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Back in the
All right, you're free to go. Lesson's over.